Okay.
Yeah.
Bear with me a second. I'll just start the recording. Okay, Chair, the recording has started.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Homes and Safe Communities Scrutiny Committee on the 10th of November 2021. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording will be archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up if they can be seen on screen, or use the raised hand function? Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues to the chairman or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chairman or Democratic officers know. If they have a webcam, then they should try turning this off, as this will help with the broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so they at least can hear and be heard. Thank you. Everybody is here, yes? Okay.
Yes. Bit foggy, but apologies for that. The camera's wearing out.
Just trying to get my picture up.
One or two people are still outstanding, Chair, but it might be late apologies. So
okay. I can't seem to open my agenda at the moment, Mark. I don't know what's going on. I'm having some issues.
Hey, Chair. Well, the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, Chair.
Okay.
I have one from Mrs. Gina Doyle, the tenant rep. I don't know if other members have anything to share in terms of apologies.
Okay, do we have any other apologies for absence? Okay, I don't see anything else.
Okay.
Agenda item 2 is, what's the agenda item 2 again? Sorry, I'm still trying to get the agenda up.
Minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of October, Chair.
Okay, are we happy with the minutes of the last meeting?
Happy to move the minutes, Chair.
Okay.
Happy to second.
Next item, Chair, is declarations of interest.
I finally got my agenda up. Thank you.
Great.
It finally just opened. Okay, thank you. So do we have any declarations of interest today? I've not received any from anybody, and I don't see any hands up. Okay, so agenda item 4 is the presentation of the community investment strategy, and I believe this is being taken by Nick with support from Peter and Mark. You'd like to go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. As well as Peter and Mark, we're joined by Leanne as well, but I'll cover some of the introductions in a second. Mark, are you okay to share the presentation? Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll bring it up ready on the screen now, Nick.
Oh, lovely, thank you. Okay, when that's loading anyway, I'll just sort of kick off with a brief sort of introduction, really, just to introduce the report and give a little bit of context. So first up, about community investment. I guess I shouldn't just assume that everyone knows what we mean when we talk about community investment. So just to clarify at the very beginning, really, as far as we're concerned, community investment is about improving tenants' lives. It's about building stronger communities. Very often there's a focus on bricks and mortar, physical improvements to homes, new kitchens, bathrooms, insulation, etc. But there's a need as well, we've recognised, to invest in the social fabric, the people behind the front doors, if you like. We've recognised this need for a long time, and back several years ago, we've created a dedicated community investment team within the council. That's grown over the last few years. But we've also developed the previous community investment strategy, which was completed and approved in 2016. That's really helped us take big steps forward and make a lot of progress, which we'll tell you about as we go on this evening. This presentation in particular really is an opportunity, I guess, to pause, reflect and look back at what's been achieved, as well as sort of celebrate success as well, if you like. By doing this, I think we can ensure the key lessons, best practice, the key highlights are captured really and feed into the new strategy. And I'll talk at the end of the presentation just a bit about next steps and the new community investment strategy, which we're started preparing now and what stage that we're at. I'm really pleased to be joined from staff by the community investment team tonight. That's been it's really sort of pleasing to do that, because those guys are the people behind the project. They're the best place to share the stories, and they can also highlight some of the impact on families and individuals as well. I tend to often talk about performance and introduce performance reports and talk about percentages and numbers and how many of this and how many of that. But with community investment, I think it's the people, it's the stories, it's the impacts behind the scenes really. So when the guys talk shortly, I think we'll hear some case studies and some examples, and they really bring things to life, because behind every number, it's not a number, it's a person really, and a story. So I think it's a great opportunity tonight to really sort of highlight some of that, some of those stories. So yeah, I'm not going to talk at length now, and I'll shortly pass you over to Peter, first of all, Peter Williams, who's going to talk about a project we're really proud of, the Opportunity Knocks programme, about supporting people back into work. After that, Leanne Young is going to highlight some of the work that's been taking place on the Finance Skills and Futures project, and that provides hands-on tailored support to individuals. Some of those are perhaps the furthest from the jobs market and furthest from employment, so I don't steal too much of Leanne's thunder here. Under the banner of health and well-being, we're pleased that Mark Faulkner has joined us tonight. He's going to talk about Time Grow Gain, a project which is promoting volunteering and digital inclusion. But Mark is also going to talk about our new area-based approach, and we've started taking that in St Luke's Avenue in Penarth, which is quite a big council estate there in Penarth, and there's a number of initiatives underway down there, including in a particular mention really, the food pod scheme. So we'll hear a little bit about that, and I think there's some photos as well as we go through the conversation. So if there's time, then once the guys have finished speaking, I'll come back in at the end just to sort of finish off and talk about next steps, the community investment strategy. So I'll probably leave it there, Jen, and if it's okay, Peter, to hand over to you to begin with, and sort of hear a bit more about the Opportunity Knocks programme. That'd be brilliant. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Nick. Would we be able to move the slides forward, please?
Yeah, bear with me, Peter.
Perfect. There we are, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Williams, and I oversee the Inspire to Work project in the Learning and Skills Directorate. And part of this evening's presentation is around Opportunity Knocks. The Opportunity Knocks project was set up around 2016, 2017. And the idea of it was set up as a partnership between 3 different partners at the start. One was Vale Homes, one was us with Inspire to Work, and the other one was Newydd Housing Association. Now the team set up and began working together, as I said, 4 or 5 years ago, and sort of identified a need within the community to support young people and adults into employment. That is partly from pre-employment support through to training, as well as identifying opportunities that they can support to gain experience ready for entry employment. Along the way then, they picked up another partner within that organisation as Adult Learning Wales, and they provide a substantial part of our training package within the partnership. And the idea of the partnership is there is a pooled budget of support, and then representatives from each team then undertake part of the work that goes alongside that. So that comes from sort of working with young people and adults face to face in those sort of scenarios within the community, but also with the sort of organising logistics, preparing training events, as well as supporting in other ways as best we can as a partnership. It works very well. People take on different roles within that, and the idea is that we all work together across directorate as well as with so the third sector organisations to be able to offer that support to serve clients and customers within the Vale. The project's open to any Vale resident. Obviously, there is a focus within the housing side with Vale Homes and there with support tenants within that. But the project overall is able to be accessed by any Vale resident, and we look at supporting them into employment, providing those experiences and that pre-employment support through qualifications. Referrals we take are generally through the staff team. However, outside agencies can refer in for support as it's identified. And then there are opportunities from that then to feed on to other projects such as the ANDS project with FSF, which we'll come on to later on. That's about in terms of the overall provision of opportunity and why it was set up in the first place. What we'll do is move on now to discuss some of the stuff in terms of what's been delivered, and then look at some of the figures and case study achievements of the project and provision. Can we move to the next slide, please? So some of the parts of work we deliver, as I said, we deliver a wide variety of qualifications, training and experience courses for clients and customers. So we deliver a sort of quarterly timetable, and that's developed alongside feedback we get from the young people and the adults who attend our courses, as well as feedback then from external agencies such as the Job Centre, and identifying local trends and other trends within sort of the wider sort of region in terms of employment market gaps. For example, current sort of gaps around HGV drivers and the care work sector are areas that we're looking to identify courses for to try and equip people to become more employable within those sectors. But what we always try and do is put the client at the centre of the work and making sure that whatever courses are offered are provided on that basis that then fit for purpose for their needs. Some of the courses and training sessions that are delivered in partnership with different agencies include security, so the SIA license, be able to work on sort of security roles, CSCS, which is part of the construction training and allows people to go onto building sites and support and work with those. Basic first aid courses, IT courses, food safety, health and safety courses, as well as more specific ones for sort of the working with young people and working within the care sector, protection of vulnerable adults, child protection, safeguarding training, as well as LSA courses for learning support in schools. It's a very wide variety of a suite of courses we can offer. And as I said, if there's more specialist courses that we need to identify and deliver or procure as part of that, then we can do. So we have put some clients on courses such as for forklift training to be able to go and work in sort of warehouses and things around the forklift devices. Alongside that, then we try and support some of the clients to either access apprenticeships or work experience as part of the project. Now that's working with local employers, local agencies to identify those positions. But as part of sort of the housing contracts and procurement contracts, there are a number of sort of apprentice opportunities and work experience opportunities that come from those. And some of the local sort of building developments specifically been identified to deliver those apprenticeships in partnership with us. We offer job club opportunities and support with job searching, CV writing, interview skills. We've had successful events where groups of clients have come in to do a sort of round robin of interviews where they've been able to access 3 or 4 different team members to do mock interviews with them, and that's been successful in gaining those sort of experiences to be able to go and deliver and then ultimately deliver a successful interview when they've applied for jobs. Alongside the formal accreditation, we've also offered more informal courses around building confidence, overcoming anxiety, developing communication skills. And a lot of these things are being supported within the courses we deliver. And we try and promote group work to sort of develop that sort of confidence side. As I said, we always offer work experience placements, but some of those also develop onto one-to-one support for tenants as part of that, because there are identified additional needs as part of that process where the providers of the apprenticeships or work experience do offer additional support to some of the tenants and clients. We also then offer try a trade days. So that gives the clients an opportunity to experience different construction settings, identify if there's a particular skill base they want to go into, and just try something out before they commit to a full apprenticeship course, for example, or commit to a role within that sort of trade. And those are successful again in supporting those clients to develop and grow, as well as giving them the confidence to be able to say, actually, I can achieve this. We can move to the next slide, please. The next two slides are going to be looking at some of the achievements that have been done as part of the Opportunity Knocks project. So this report was written from the 2019-20 data. There's currently a report ongoing to develop a report to feedback on the last financial year. However, within that, then it identifies 140 residents went through the Vale Employability Roadshows and were able to be supported as part of that. 60 residents were supported with CV and interview preparation skills as part of the pre-employment training. And again, that's developed, as I said, to develop other opportunities as part of that. 30 residents were able to attend residential employability boot camps. So these were delivered by a local military fitness organisation. As part of that, they delivered confidence boosting, confidence building activities, as well as some of the more sort of fitness and fitness development course alongside that. So it's a bit of a combination course. Move to the next slide, please. Within the council departments as well, it is a cross directorate partnership, as I said earlier, and as part of that, there were an opportunity to create 7 6-week work placements across different departments. We've also supported 7 residents into gaining apprenticeship opportunities, and we'll come on to one of the apprenticeship opportunities we as a case study later on. As part of the clauses within the housing development programmes locally, they were able to secure 369 weeks worth of training through targeted recruitment with those agencies and with the developers within those projects. 110 residents were able to gain employment following the support that was offered, and a total of 961 accredited vocational qualifications were achieved as well alongside that. Finally, alongside the apprenticeships and employment, we also support people to become self-employed. And we realise there are additional barriers within this, but as part of the support within the 2019-20 year, there were 7 people that became self-employed as part of that. If we can move to the next slide, please. Now this section is just going to be going through a case study that was submitted as part of the Opportunity Knocks programme. So a young person who was a female 17-year-old, she had left care following being in care for I think around 8 or 10 years. As part of the project support she had back in February 2020, she was desperate to find a career in a sector that she would enjoy. She wasn't sure what that would be at the start, so a lot of one-to-one work was put in to start to identify what she wanted to do and how she wanted to go about it. She hadn't had the best start in her education sort of career and things, and she hadn't had a great experience of the education system as either. So part of that was trying to break down those internal barriers for her. Once that was done, the young person was able to identify that construction might be an area that she was going into. Now this would be obviously challenging some gender stereotypes and things around the construction sector. So there were a lot of discussions with her around those sorts of elements. What we started doing with her then was we identified some training courses to go on for her. Firstly, to build her confidence in the area and the topic and skills being addressed, but also so that she could get some qualifications under her belt. As I said, she didn't have a great experience of education and left school with very few qualifications. With that then, the CV was able to be enhanced, and some of those courses she undertook were working at heights and safety harnessing, first aid at work, food safety, health and safety in the construction course, which then led on to her completing her CSCS qualification and receiving her CSCS card to go onto a building site, which was a great achievement for her and was a real testament to the commitment she put into the work as well. As part of that, then, as a follow-up, she then was supported into achieving a work placement, of a work experience placement up at the Whitmore High 21st Century School site. Initially, it was down as a 2-week experience, just to get her into the work idea, get her into the routine, as well as give her a bit of experience within a building site. The feedback from the site was so brilliant that she ended up being there for over a month, because they just wanted to keep her there as much as possible due to her hard work, her motivation, her commitment, and how well she learned everything on the job. And this was clearly a much more vocational, practical course for her to be able to go down and take on those skill bases that she developed. Following on that then, we supported her to be able to apply for an apprenticeship, because she identified from that then which sector of construction she wanted to go into. And from that then, Y Apprentice were able to offer a construction-based apprenticeship within painting and decorating. And her first placement was then based with one of the local Newydd housing sites in Barry. And again, following an interview with the building contractor Sterling, she gave an amazing interview with the confidence she developed and be able to evidence the skills she'd learned while up on Whitmore High. And from that then, she was able to put across her passion, her drive, and her want to be able to achieve. She turned out to be the 300th apprentice with Y Apprentice, which was a great sort of selling point for them as well. And from that then, she was able to work towards her NVQ qualification in college alongside that. So even though formal education wasn't her strength within school environments, it was able to balance quite well with her on a work site at the same time. And the provider of the building site was able to provide extra support to her as well, alongside the support we could offer. From that then, she's continued to develop, and she's now continuing to work towards the NVQ, sorry. And the feedback from her social worker at the time, who was struggling to find something to engage her with, was just saying about how much support had gone in behind the scenes and how much support we could offer. Alongside that then, we were able to offer her PPE to be able to go onto site, pay for some of her initial lunches while she was up at Whitmore High as well, because she wasn't in a wage up there. So these are all things that go on behind the scenes to help make sure there are no barriers to that young person or client being able to access those opportunities. And that is pretty much the Opportunity Knocks package, really. The idea is, as I said, it's a cross-directorate support package that aims to support those clients and remove those barriers to make sure they are able to succeed and find something they're passionate in. Thank you very much. I'll pass you over to Leanne, or did you want to do questions if there are any?
Chair, is it okay to go through the presentations first of all, because we've got quite a bit to say, and then pick up questions at the end? Is that okay? Because I think Leanne will go next if that's...
I think we best take questions at the end.
Okay, so if we could go to the next slide, please. My name's Leanne, and I currently coordinate the FSF, the Finances, Skills and Futures project. The FSF came around in March with, it's DWP funded, and although it's a separate entity, it runs closely alongside Opportunity Knocks. The idea of the FSF is to offer a more holistic approach. Some people call it hand-holding, which a lot of clients do need. They're referred in from many agencies or projects such as Opportunity Knocks, Inspire to Work, Money Advice and Atoli Fro, to name a few. Whilst initially my role was coordinating the project was part-time, within 8 months our 12-month target has been reached regarding the number of clients, resulting in 10% of these now in employment and 3% settled within the volunteering roles. All clients will benefit from the holistic approach offered through the FSF, but some require a little more hand-holding than others. Okay, so what should people expect when they're referred to the FSF? Well, The FSF is a journey. Many people come to us and take advantage of the journey as a whole, whilst others just dip in and access certain elements that they need at that time. With regards to finances, we can offer clients advice on money, budgeting, debts, prioritising bills, benefit claims, arrears that they may have. Next, we would then look at their skills. So I think when people are struggling financially, it creates this whole anxiety, this worry, and it's hard to look outside of that. So when you do settle that for people and get things more organised for them, they're ready to move on, maybe have a look at their skills. Some people have gaps in their CVs which need to be filled. We work closely alongside Opportunity Knots with regards to training for this, but also run some of our own courses, including wellbeing courses to build confidence and reduce anxiety. Moving on from skills then, we look at futures. When people have their skills in place, some people are ready for work, other people, I guess they're more in a place of exploring their volunteering opportunities first. I'll come on to that in the case study and how volunteering is key for some clients in moving in the positive direction. Futures that we can support with applying for jobs, so job applications, interview skills, putting together the CVs. Maybe some people need financial help with regards to interviews, so we can look at helping them with a uniform, with maybe a laptop should they need that to search for jobs, to apply for jobs. So I guess that's what you would expect from the FSF. The FSF is a new project and we're learning all the time from it. It does adapt, it adapts weekly to clients' needs. It's proven that the holistic approach is something that works really well for people. Although for some it's a slower journey, it's a better journey. I think sometimes when you rush people through a journey, they can relapse back to maybe not wanting to work, back into their home. Whereas if you take it slow and make that more positive experience, it will be sustained for longer. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this is one of our success stories. I call them good news stories. This is about a young lady that first came to me when I started coordinating the FSF project. She was incredibly anxious, and to get her to answer the phone was a challenge. I soon learned that if I called and she didn't answer, I could send her a text and she would happily communicate via text. The text moved on from her actually answering a phone call. And after a little while, I was able to get her out of the house and come to meet me and discuss opportunities. This young lady has overcome her barriers with regards to anxiety. She is able to leave the house, which was a huge thing for her. She didn't see herself, she didn't have much self-belief. When I suggested volunteering to her, she couldn't see how she could do that. But through this holistic hand-holding approach, I managed to secure a volunteering opportunity for her. She goes every week and has asked to go more than once a week. I've had to actually slow her down a little bit because I said, you know, you can't go into this and give everything because you'll wear yourself out. So she goes every week. She thoroughly enjoyed it. And through this volunteering role, she's now got the opportunity to train. She's going to do a course which we've funded for her in order to train for forestry school training. So the volunteering role that she's in, hopefully now will have an outcome of her working as a paid employee, delivering forestry school lessons to children. She can't believe that she's on this journey and she's achieved so much. It's really rewarding to see somebody who had little self-worth, who had massive issues with anxiety, with confidence, is now just grasping at the bit for the next opportunity. We also have another story that I wrote today, and I mentioned earlier that the project evolves frequently. we have a vision of what the project looks like, but our clients teach us that the project can adapt, can change, can evolve, can fill gaps. One of our clients came to us, and I first worked with her with regards to her finances. She was struggling with some debt. We spoke about that, we put that right, and she started asking about training. She brings up her son alone, and it was a worry, you know, how can I afford to do this? Is this possible? So we talked about training. She attended many courses through the Opportunity Knox and has added a few qualifications to her CV, which in turn has boosted her confidence. She is now in an employed role with the council, and she's doing fantastically well. Now, when somebody reaches that goal of being employed, we assumed that the project would leave them be and move on maybe to the next client, or that was it for them. But what she's taught us is when people do become employed, if they've come off benefits, they still need that support. They still need to know how their benefits will change, who they need to inform, how that's going to affect them, what they will receive. So that's been a real interesting lesson that we've learned very recently, and something that we will look to support many more clients on also. I mentioned earlier about where we get our referrals from. We get referrals from many places. What I'll do at the end of this is pop a referral form in the chat, because any one of you who may be working with somebody on universal credit going through a similar struggle, you're more than welcome to refer them on to the project. And that's it.
Oh, thanks, Leanne. I think next we come to you, Mark, if it's okay.
Yeah, still not quite used to unmuting things. Do you mind going to the next slide, please, Mark? And I think, sorry, Nick, are we doing these two slides?
Yeah, skip through if you can. We're probably
these two slides. You can look at them later. They're very statistical, but in reality, there's not really much else to add other than the fact that this is what we've done. So yeah, if you can skip this one and the next one. So this is. So I'll start with talking about the project that I am employed to deliver, and then obviously I'll talk about, as Nick said, the project which the other Mark Ellis, has been delivering that I've been supporting on. My project came about as a result of Public Health Wales funding to expand the time banking programme that Mark Ellis had started a few years ago in the Vale. Time banking, for those who don't know, is a recognition scheme for volunteers. So for every hour that they give, they get a time credit, and they can use that to do a range of activities across the Vale and across the whole country. So Tempo, who run the time credit scheme, are funded by the Welsh Government. So the time credits at the moment don't cost us anything, which they used to cost us money previously, because it wasn't funded by the Welsh Government. So it was put together by the Public Service Board as a project to move forward with. We're actually in year 3 of the project, and I started in June. So we had to deliver quite quickly. We also brought on board some partners. So we brought on board GVS and a really exciting partner called Benfig. And if you haven't already looked it up, it's definitely worth looking at. So Benfig, they operate what's called a library of things, where you can borrow things at very low cost. So like garden equipment, gym equipment, DIY equipment, those sort of things. And they've got libraries popping up now all over the Vale and rapidly expanding. The shop in Barry, which is the one that we're helping to fund, is in the Awesome Wales Zero Waste shop, which is obviously a very good place for that sort of organisation. Shortly, they're going to have e-cargo bikes to deliver things and an electric van to deliver items around Barry as well. So we're supporting them, and the people who, so they've got a project officer who we've employed, but they're looking for volunteers, and they run a volunteering every Wednesday night, 5 till 7. And there's another session that Amy, the officer, is setting up. I think it's at the library on a Monday. So if you want any more details on that, if you are interested in volunteering, then you could also get time credits, which is nice. So in terms of my part of the project, I am supporting organisations as well as supporting some programmes that we had running internally with time credits. So I'm working with people like Vale Plus and some local schools to deliver the time credits and make sure that volunteering is sort of at the forefront of what each of those organisations are doing. This morning we had our first session with the Digital Champions, which is a Vale supported, Vale Home supported initiative to get people online. It was really positive. I saw someone make their first video call, someone else who used the internet for the first time. It was a really good opportunity for the volunteers to deliver projects and also for the people in Dennis Powys to sort of pick up these new skills that are really important moving forward. And it's good that we can use this project to support the council tenants, but also because I'm obviously funded by Public Health Wales, I'm supporting all sorts of people across the Vale. And if you're interested, for example, for things like litter picking and things like that, I'm happy to come and chat to anyone who wants to hear more. Or if you have a voluntary project yourself, I know that I was talking to a councillor the other day who is supporting a voluntary cafe. Obviously, I'm more than happy to come and have a chat and we can see whether we can get time credits sort of added to the incentive for volunteers. The aim of the project is to reduce social isolation, so it's about getting people out of their houses, but it's also about trying to get people who don't traditionally volunteer to come and volunteer. So I think that's a good thing and a good way of looking at it. Do you mind going to the next slide, please, Mark? So this is from the case study, and actually I think it's probably the same person that Leanne's talking about in her case study, but this is an email that she sent to me, or from an email she sent to me, and she's given me permission to share it, about the difference that the volunteering opportunity that we arranged for her has made to her confidence, and I think it says quite a lot about the ability of the community investment team to work together to make sure that the people who live in our area are supported to boost their confidence, reduce their isolation, and improve their lives. I think it says quite a lot, and yeah, she was full of praise for Leanne, and she really did appreciate the support of the project in giving her the ability to go to this place that she wouldn't normally be able to get to because it's further out, so we could pay for the taxis and things like that, but also in actually putting the project on and then giving her the time credits after, so that she's got some recognition in that way as well. So that is in a nutshell time banking. If there's any questions at the end, I'm happy to take them, but for now I'll move on to the Clean Slate project. Do you mind going to the next slide, please, Mark? Okay, so the Clean Slate project is it was a sort of broad approach to an estate where it has occasional issues with challenging behaviour, but an antisocial behaviour, but also issues around things like fly tipping. And so what we were looking to do is try and support the area in 4 different ways to see whether by doing all of this sort of work around it, we can improve the well-being of the people who live there. So obviously the first one, better connected, is the top bullet point there. We're working with the people in the area, and My Digital Champions will support those people in the area, and we're also looking to do things like putting Wi-Fi into the existing structures there so that people can get online and do those sort of things. So Cleaner, we have installed the wooden pallet boxes where people can put their bins and recycling, which is it's a difficult thing for people to do in flats. Obviously, if you're in a house, you've often got a little bit of space out the back where you can keep your items and things. In St Paul's, we've installed for each of the flats this box which can hold their recycling, their food waste, and any other rubbish, so that when bin day comes, the items can be taken out of there, put in the bin, and then placed back into the the receptacle, with the aim of trying to keep it tidier, but also to stop rubbish going all over the street when it's a windy day or a rainy day. So that at the moment I think is working well. But also it's not just about the infrastructure, it's also about providing advice around the recycling, what can be recycled, what can't be recycled, to support that sort of thing. And then moving on to talk about Greener, which is Mark Ellis has secured some funding from Keep Wales Tidy, which is going to deliver a community garden space and some other gardening sort of initiatives around the estate, including some trees, so some fruit trees. And so over the next couple of years we'll be delivering that package of work, and we're hoping that there's quite a lot of grass. You'll see in a couple of slides time there's quite a lot of grass in the area, quite a lot of open space, and so we're hoping that with the residents on board, which they are, that we'll be able to use some of that space to sort of deliver activities but give the residents something to do in the open areas. So the next bullet point, so becoming healthier. This is probably the most exciting part, certainly for me, was the delivery of the food pod, which is a pay as you can afford or pay as you want food shop. So we get our donations from Fair Share. We pay them a weekly fee to deliver it to us, but we get donations from them as well as a wide range of other organisations. So we get some from some of the supermarkets. We've got Asda and Morrison's on board, as well as we had some from the Salvation Army. And so we've got a fridge and we've got shelves which has got non-perishable goods on it, as well as some toiletries, which is also really important for trying to keep the people in the area with those items that are quite often more expensive. And so we've been delivering that since the start of August, and it's grown and grown, and more people turn up each week, and it is really positive. So the most positive thing out of that is that we've managed to secure funding for a second pod, because the existing pod is set up inside the residents groups, like metal container where that's all held. And so the plan is to move the food pod into the new pod, and then the old pod can be returned to the residents group, but also to offer a space for people to run courses out of, do some of the digital inclusion work like I'll be doing, as well as offering it to people like Benthig, who have a presence in Penarth but want to get out of Penarth Centre and get into the more deprived wards to support the work of the local community there. So that's really exciting, and so by this time next month we should have placed the new pod on its foundations and be looking to plumb it in, which is really good. And so just before Christmas we'll have the new food pod, and hopefully me and Mark will be in there over Christmas, making sure that the residents have still got food to eat and you know, the toiletries and those sort of things. So that's the plan for the next month, and really exciting. And the pod will also be attached to the main community garden, where there is a going to be a plastic greenhouse. That's the word I'm looking for, and I think that's the bottom bit about the biodiversity development package. And so people will be able to sort of come and go out of the food pod into there, and it's possible that we may even be able to get the food from there and actually sell it in the pod, which will be really exciting. And the other good thing is we managed to get 5 out of 5 on our food safety, so that's really positive, and shows that I think a lot of work went into that, certainly from Mark Ellis. So he's done a good job. Do you mind moving to the next slide, please? So this just gives you a bit of an idea of the amount of funding that came through. So we had the Welsh Government food pod funding, the community budget award, which went towards the garden, Keep Wales Tidy awarded, and then the local housing budget was used for the bin storage, and we launched the food pod. If you can just go on to the next slide, please. So what you can see here is some of the area, as you can see, some of the litter that was there prior to us doing a bit of the work there, and then the space where eventually fruit trees will go. and other sort of planters, and that's on the top. On the bottom, you can see the existing pod, which is where the Star Residents Group hold their meetings, and you can see we had this sign made, which is really nice. And then, so that's the bottom left. Where the bottom right is where the new food pod is going and the new community garden. So it will be sort of right next to it, but give it a little community feel, while still protecting the house on the bottom left, or the flat on the bottom left, from being blocked of any light. We've been quite careful with placing it, so we think it's going to look really smart, and that is quite exciting. So that is that. Do you mind going on to the next slide, please? So this just gives you a bit more information, and I've already mentioned a lot of the things on there, but if you do need any sort of statistics or anyone asks you any questions about it, this gives you an idea of when it's open. Obviously we still want volunteers. If people are willing to volunteer in the area, they'll be eligible for time credits. So as part of my project, to get a bit of sort of cross community investment working, and obviously it's open to anyone in Penarth, or well, anyone in the area. So it's not just for council tenants, it's for everyone. So if you know of anyone struggling, certainly with things like universal credit, and we've got people from the areas where there's housing association, council tenants and private housing, it's absolutely worth them coming over to see us on a Monday or a Friday between 2 and 4, and hopefully eventually we'll expand to more times, but as I say, it's pay as you can afford, so people just need to turn up with whatever's in their purse or wallet, and they can take a bag of food away for whatever that is. Next slide, please. And this is just some nice pictures of Mark, top left, picking up some donations from Asda, I think, from the colour of the sign. Top right is what the shelving looks like at the moment. The new food pod's going to have it all built in, which is exciting. There's a fridge just to the right. There's a bit of the leaflet there, and then we've got our nice sign. I've no idea why we've got a man holding a cockerel, but I like it anyway. But yeah, that's the sign that we had made on the initial sort of inaugural open day, which is a really nice it was done by residents and the children of residents. They had a great time doing it, and it looks really rustic, which is what we wanted. And so that is, in a nutshell, cleaner, greener, healthier, connected, which is called the Clean Slate Project. And I think that's me done, Nick, so over to you.
It is, yeah. Just very, very briefly, and just to finish off, that thanks to the guys there for input there. But just some examples really of what community investment work involves, and why we do it, and some really powerful sort of examples and outcomes, really, the difference that makes on people's lives. Hopefully that gives people an idea of the breadth of the work as well. The things that we mentioned there are some examples. It's not an exhaustive list. There are lots and lots of other things as well that have been going on, and we can share some more information with those as well. And the third point I guess I'd make really is in terms of we employ staff to begin with, but they're effective at levering in extra funding then, whether that's public service board money or from different charities, different funders, etc., to fund staff and to grow the work. So it's really grown over the last few years, and we'd hope it would grow significantly over the next few years. So Mark, if I could just have the last slide, I think. Perfect. So the stage we're at the moment is that the current strategy is in place since 2016, and we've started a process really to review and update that. Clearly there's some successes there which we want to build on and develop further, but there might be some gaps as well. So internally we're having lots of conversations within our team and with partners and with anyone else really who's got an interest in this area, and sort of think about what are the priorities and the objectives we need to include in the new strategy. As work progresses, we would hope to bring back a paper for discussion to Homes and Safe Communities to flag up some of the initial thoughts and priorities, and an opportunity for elected members to feed into that as well, with a view to then finalising a strategy for the next 5 years really to carry on that really good work. So I'll probably leave it there, Chair, if that's okay. And just if anyone had any questions for anybody on any of the content really.
Well, thank you, everybody. That was very interesting. There's obviously been a lot of successes with that as well. I do have a couple of questions regarding the opportunity knocks, and then I can see Councillor Nugent-Finn also has her hand up. So I shall quickly ask my questions and then go to Councillor Nugent-Finn and Councillor Perks as well now. So my first question is regarding the Opportunity Knox funding. Where does it come from and how long do we have it for?
So as I said, there's 3 different main funding streams involved with this. The one that I'm involved with is Inspire to Work. We don't contribute financial fund towards the cost of the courses, but some of my staff time from my project staff goes into the organising and sort of logistic organising from that. So that's our main contribution from that, due to us having quite a small sort of spending pot because we're funded from a different funding pot. The other 2 main areas then are from Vale Homes and Newydd Housing, and they contribute part of their funding. I'm not sure about figures and amounts and things from each partner, but I'm sure we can find that out and share that with the committee if they'd like to know.
Yeah,
Chair, that would be our core sort of community investment funding that we'd put into the project, and like Peter says, we can confirm the exact amounts because they might have changed since I last looked at the budget monitoring reports.
Yeah, no worries. I was wondering more than anything if we got it from anywhere else other than the 3 partners more than anything.
And then the other one to include with that is Adult Learning Wales, who are able to access some of their financial hardship funding to pay for some of the accreditation courses for those who are on benefits at all.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any waiting lists? Is there anybody waiting to come on? Are we over capacity with it?
Not particularly. We've had a bit of delay in some of the lockdown situations because of a lot of our face-to-face training couldn't take place. So every time there's a lockdown, there's always a build-up through those periods. But what we try and tend to do is clear those within about a month and a half, 2 months of being able to deliver face-to-face again.
That's
And
really good going.
for the last couple of times, we've had to do quite intensive blocks of training. So
Yeah.
what we do with our construction, for example, is we don't just put them on a construction course to get their CSCS card. We do an intensive 2-week training program where they do risk assessment, health and safety in the workplace. They do first aid. They do COSH, which is the hazardous substances course, and that all builds up as part of the revision towards their CSCS. We don't have a current waiting list, but what we do is as we identify course needs, then we wait for a group that's big enough to be able to host that if it's a course that would suit many. If not, we identify providers then who can provide sort of bespoke and individual courses for smaller cohorts.
Okay, thank you. My final question is, we've heard a lot about the successes of the Opportunity Knox programme. Have there been many people where it hasn't quite worked out?
There have been some examples. So we take, as I said, we take referrals onto the project from a wide variety of backgrounds, and we are able to support most people with their barriers. There are certain examples where some individuals and some clients have unfortunately had other more severe barriers, or have had problems themselves in terms of going back into, in some situations, going back into prison. And they've reoffended and gone back into a prison situation, so we haven't been able to engage. But what we will do is we will always have an open door policy in terms of re-engagement, and if a client identifies that they do want support at a future time, if the moment isn't right for them because of barriers they've got, they can always contact one of the team and they'll be able to access support later on. So it's not a case of once they disengage or don't continue with the project that they're then forgotten about and they're not allowed to engage again. We will then always make sure that if there is a need, then they're able to access it again in the future.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. I've seen Councillor Nugent-Finn has lowered her hand, so I will go straight to Councillor Perks. Thank you.
So, sorry, Chair, I was just putting it down out of politeness because you'd acknowledged me.
Sorry, okay, Councillor Nugent-Finn, if you'd like to go next.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, Peter, Leanne, Mark and Nick, thank you for a really enthusiastic sort of programme of events and presentations. That in itself is just so good to listen to. So thank you all very sincerely. It's much appreciated. Peter, you gave a list of, can I start with yourself, Peter? Sorry, first of all, is that all right?
Yes, carry on.
You gave a list of some of the partner providers. You mentioned quite a few, but you didn't mention Kickstart. Do you work alongside, or do you can you refer on to? I'm presuming you do, but can you just clarify that for me.
Absolutely, yes. So as part of the support we provide within the Opportunity Knox, we have quite a few Kickstart positions, and young people looking to go on to Kickstart positions attend some of our courses, particularly ones for like shorter term positions within the catering environment and sort of, those sorts of backgrounds where they need food hygiene courses or first aid. And they're very much a case of supporting those individuals to support then going on to those positions as part of it. We will then support them with CV writing and the application process, which is quite straightforward for Kickstart. And yeah, absolutely do engage with those. Once they're in those positions, then we can also contribute and support them with their first couple of weeks of travel to make sure that's a sustained placement as well.
Yeah, lovely. Really glad to hear that, Peter, because it's you know, it is specific in terms of age and, as you quite rightly say, the term, but it does have a, you know, the Vale are taking it up now more and more in various departments. So I'm just great. Bit of feedback then. Can you self-refer? Can I refer, for example, or can a family member refer another family member? What is the sort of procedure?
Absolutely, there's no real procedure in terms of referring. Anyone can refer to the project. As I said, most of them come through a pre-existing project or provision because it's an identified need. As part of that, there is a training need. However, if you've got an individual or you're aware of somebody who would like support, they're more than welcome to get in touch. One thing we are working beyond the work of community investment and beyond, we're looking at widening employability support within the Vale and providing some targeted support with that. And part of that is developing a web page on the Vale's website for Vale residents to be able to identify if I need support with employability, whether that's courses, training, CV writing, etc. They can go to one page on the website rather than trying to dip into different project websites. And from there, then they'll be able to access a training brochure of all the opportunities available within the Vale, which also includes training providers from C4W, from Communities for Work, Communities for Work Plus, and adult community learning as well. So from those, it'll all be brought together into one training brochure, which anyone can then access through the website. And there will also be an A to Z list of all the providers that are able to offer support within the Vale. So we're hoping that will be in place to launch between January and March this next year.
Yeah, I think you absolutely need that, Peter, and I'm so pleased to hear that you're going to have that sort of opportunity to launch it, you know, through social media. And again, I'm sure other members would agree, but if we can share it via our social media, I would be really pleased to be able to do that. So let us know when that's up and running. Thinking about the skills shortages, and you did mention it, that you do team up with the skills, which is again fantastic. Did you attend the sort of carers sort of careers like they were trying to recruit in Penarth? I'm just wondering, that comes under the healthy living social care sort of remit, but there was a big recruitment drive, obviously, because of the shortage of carers in the sector at the minute. Were you part of that? Did you get an invite?
I was aware of it. Unfortunately, I was already on another course that day, so I couldn't attend. And I think Farida may have attended from housing. Nick might be able to correct me on that one. But I think she attended as part of that, and she did publicise that, as far as I'm aware. The issue we are having is trying to engage clients to actually want to go into those professions, and that's one of the issues we've identified as part of the work we've done, is that even though there's a requirement, there's a need for those positions, unfortunately, it's very well known as well that the care profession is underpaid, that there's a lot of hard hours that go into those positions.
Yeah, of course.
And unfortunately, it's not the most appealing of sort of careers at the moment. So we are trying to work to improve that. We have got some plans in place to try and sort of develop that locally. But we are aware of it, and we do try and tie in where we can. Yeah,
hence the recruitment drive. You're absolutely right. It's a national issue, and now I think central government are becoming involved. So that, you know, again, let's hope that there's some sort of marriage between all of this. Really, that's great. I only mention it because it would have been a good opportunity, because I don't know what the turnout is. I will find that out from the cabinet member. But that, if anything like that happens again, it would be a good opportunity for your team. Do you work in conjunction with Pobble?
We have done a little bit with Pobble so far, but I think because they're still quite new to the area, we are trying to tie in with other providers across the board. So I think Pobble is one that we haven't tied in with yet as such, but it's on the radar to link in with.
Again, I think that would be really worthwhile, Peter, because you can. It's all internal, isn't it? And I'm sure that you'd have sort of a vice versa referral approach to this. So it's just a recommendation, but it would seem like a natural blend that you should team up with them, Peter. In my humble opinion, Leanne. Can you give me an example? You mentioned a volunteering opportunity. Can you give me an example or even a specific of that actual volunteering opportunity that your case study you mentioned?
Can I just answer your question about Pobble? I actually do link with Pobble, so through the FSF, I get referrals in through them.
Great.
With regards to the case study, sorry, what did you want to know?
I wanted to know what the actual volunteering opportunity was, what the voluntary agency was, please, if you can supply that information.
She was actually somebody I knew personally, and knowing what she was trying to achieve and create, and knowing that she has a holistic approach as well. She works alongside Fonmont Castle, doing the outdoors archery. She's looking to set up the forest school. I just thought that what she was doing, what she had to offer, would really complement my client and gently ease her back into socialising, volunteering, and ultimately training in the workplace.
Okay, thanks, Leanne.
Okay.
Mark, can you send me a referral pack, please? In fact, could I have a referral pack off every division? Is that okay? So I can sort of start utilising your services. Mark, again, just a brilliant presentation. Thank you. The food pod, how do you decide the location? Was it decided for you, or did we have a sort of a consultation, or was it like a needs led?
It was. I think it was. I would call it needs led. I think it was. It came out of the idea that St Luke's and St Paul's, being outside of Barry as well, it's in Penarth. It's quite often, I think the people there quite often felt overlooked. They're not, but I think they felt that a lot of stuff happens in Barry, and things particularly because they miss out on things like the sort of family fund and those sort of things. Not family fund. The stuff that you have in like Gibbons Down and Cadoxton. So it's nice to be able to go there and deliver services to them. But it was also because it was a good location, because we had already a structure there that we could trial it in. And I think that was a good start. And I think now we've done it there, I know that there's neighbourhood managers, certainly in the Buttrells has already started to talk to us about, can we bring something like this here? Yes. So, and again, I think that sort of like food pod works in those sort of communities where everything is quite close. And particularly around that sort of deprivation aspect. So that was where it came from. It just came, I think, the funding came up and there was some community investment budget, because obviously coronavirus stopped a lot of the activity that we've been doing. And so it just made sense. And then obviously we got this Welsh Government grant, and so we've been able to run with it. So yeah, I would call it needs led though. That area is struggling with deprivation, and so it's making a big difference. And I can certainly say there's a lot of examples. So when I go and work there on a Friday to support the volunteers, the people there are immensely grateful for the ability to get food, which is really good quality food, for what they can afford at that moment. And there's people coming in, and because it's pay as you can afford, people can come in and take food for nothing, which is also quite important, because there's people who come in and say, well, my universal credit stops, I don't know what else I'd do if I didn't have this. And that, when someone says that to you, you think, okay, let's, this is what this is for. It's to support people, and it's pay as you can afford, so someone can come and put a tenner in, even if they're taking a can of beans. It's about supporting that. So it's been really positive.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was very interesting presentation. I don't know whether some staff will remember that I used to work for the Vale, and I was a job search officer for the Vale of Glamorgan Council for a long period of time under Job Shop Extra. So yeah, I understand the challenges that you can face, but also the satisfaction of getting people, moving them along and getting them into work. So, from those that are 2 steps away from the job market to those who are, you know, sort of nearer and just need that extra bit of support. My question is, or one of a few, do you track the people who perhaps leave the course and don't attain anything? Are you able to track those to see whether they've gone into work? Also, I'm assuming that you're tracking people who are sort of have gone into work to find out if they're staying sustainable employment as well.
In terms of the supporting into employment, tracking those who have entered, part of what we do as part of the project is do a follow-up around 6 months after they've started to make sure there's sort of sustaining there, if there's any more support they need. And there are also opportunities that if the client does drop out or is struggling with the aspect, they are able to contact us again to re-engage at any point. So that's fine on that side. The other element in terms of those who don't achieve, there will be some follow-up work done with them where possible to identify if there was a specific barrier, if they'd gone too fast, if they'd gone into the courses too fast before they were ready to, and identifying the additional support they would need. And if needed, we can put in additional support from one-to-one work within that course as well. If they need support with reading and writing, we can provide that support as well. So again, we try and identify as many barriers as we can before they start the provision. If, however, as part of it, they identify themselves as another barrier, then we will try and adapt to that as we can.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask, what sort of confidence building course do you do? Is it a specific programme that you've brought in to use with people, or is it something that the Vale has developed itself?
The previous ones we've done through Opportunity Knox have been ones that we've brought in. There were two organisations off the top of my head. One was one that just focused on well-being and those sort of discussion points around sort of developing confidence. The other one, as I said, was a military fitness boot camp type element, which tied in the elements of fitness, healthy living lifestyles alongside the confidence building. But I know Leanne has done some more work on top of that now, so I'm not sure if Leanne wants to add to that from an FSF side at all.
Yeah, sure. We've just secured 2 providers to deliver workshops once a month. The one workshop is run over 3 days. The workshop has a group attendance of up to 6. We try and tailor the workshop to the group's needs. So the one we've just run addresses confidence, anxiety. The clients will attend day 1. They'll have a one-to-one with the providers, talking about their needs. The first day then we'll talk about confidence, anxiety, as will the second flow into that. But then the third day is tailored to the needs that have been raised in the one-to-ones on day 1. We also have another provider who comes in once a month over 2 days. She offers more one-to-one sessions with clients. Some clients aren't in a situation where they're confident enough in a group, certainly sharing their thoughts and feelings within a group. So we direct them down the one-to-one route, and then once they've done that, they may do that maybe just for 1 month. They have the opportunity to carry that on into the second. When they're ready, we offer them then the group work over 3 days.
Okay, that sounds really interesting, and like, you know, it's bespoke for the person.
Absolutely.
Sorry, can I stop you there, Councillor Boots, just for a second. I didn't notice earlier that Mike had his hand up until he took it down. So I don't know if he wants to come in on something earlier. Sorry, we'll come back to you in a second.
Sorry, Chair. It was just to flag up on some of the questions, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Councillor Perks. Funding was mentioned. You mentioned funding. A lot of the funding that we get obviously are from our development programmes, both ourselves and NEWID. So as part of the procurement activity, we obviously we receive an amount of money for community benefits, and that's fed into all of our community development work. The mention of the funding as well for the food pod. The food pod is a pilot, and the intention is that will be self-sustaining going forward, but we realise that there needs to be a lot of effort initially in order to get the project up and running. So whilst there has been some prime funding gone into the scheme, the intention is that obviously as time goes on, we would hope that there would be voluntary involvement there that will form their, volunteers will form their own group and will be able to access longer term sustainable funding, you know, in areas where the council as a statutory provider can't do that. There's nothing to stop any other area of the Vale wanting to set up a food pod. And obviously residents could come to us for advice, and obviously in terms of accessing funding and opportunities, we can direct people. But the intention is not for the council to continue to provide food pods across the local authority. It is very much around creating those opportunities for other groups potentially to take those on. So I didn't want members from other areas of the Vale thinking, well, how come it, you know, Barry or now in Penarth? What about the rural areas? What about the pockets of deprivation or financial pressures that people find in other areas? But you know, if you are aware of groups and if you want to look at starting a food pod type service yourselves in your own ward areas, or the community councils, or anyone that may be interested, if you've got volunteers and you've got somebody with a passion and drive that wants to take it forward, then come and speak to us. And just a final point in terms of who accesses the scheme, we've obviously heard from the contributors today around how people are referred in, but I just wanted to highlight that we also, into some of our wider corporate agendas, certainly around our youth offending service, obviously finding the opportunity knocks and the FSF service of great value, because traditionally some of those people are also furthest away from education and employment, and some of the skills and training that we're able to provide obviously are more suited to some of those young people who are and to divert them away from some of the activities that they've previously been involved with. And also in terms of our leaving care cohort, there are some excellent examples where we've been able to support people as part of our wider strategic aims as well, in terms of the young people that we look after ourselves. I just wanted to add that, just to give a bit of strategic and corporate flavour around some of the work that we're doing as well.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Back to you, Councillor Perks. Apologies for the interruption there.
That's okay.
I wasn't quite on the ball.
No, that's okay. Thanks, Mike, for answering those different queries as well. I suppose another thing is that I wondered whether sort of the employment side, if you have connections with bigger employers where they can also do employment interviews or offer sort of work placements with them. So with British Gas or different employers like that are based in Cardiff as well, whether you have those connections or are planning to try and build connections with different employers to have a route for people to go into work.
We have tried with a few of them to look at develop those relationships. So again, they're ones that we're able to develop as we go along. What we try and do, though, a lot of the sort of need that we've identified is mainly in the construction area. And because there aren't as many national, sort of, apart from obviously housing organisations, the closest we've been able to get with those are the 21st century school sites, which are sort of the bigger organisations that take on those building contracts and things. So we do try and link up with 21st century schools for quite a few of our opportunities, as well as the housing association contracts, because they're the ones that are local to the community. Because again, travel within to an area, even though some of those areas are just a train ride away, it could be that these individuals don't want to leave their locality, but also down to if they haven't got their own car and things, some of the transport links to other areas outside of Barry and Penarth and things do make it a bit more difficult to get to Cardiff and Newport, where some of those opportunities are available. But as we are able to identify different opportunities, we do try and engage with those at different levels.
Okay, thank you. I do understand about, you know, working out of the area as well, but yes, thank you very much for that, and thank you for your hard work. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Perks, thank you very much. I have Councillor Aviat now next, if you'd like to go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, my question is for Mark. It's to do with the time banking. before COVID, you know, we were doing a lot of litter picking in Gibbonsdown, but I've lost a volunteer who was coordinating the time banking with Mark Ellis. How are we going about it now? And if I take the children out and the teachers in the 2 schools, do I pass on do I get their information, you know, that to you, or, you know, how do we coordinate that now? Now I've lost one of my volunteers. Thanks.
So Tempo moved everything online as a result of the pandemic. So it's not quite as it was where we gave out paper time credits at the moment. However, I'm happy to support you and organisations like you with the paperwork that we need to give out the time credits, and obviously explain the process that needs to be done. Obviously, if they're a child and they're with a parent, of how we get time credits for both the child and the parent. Which is also really important to recognise everyone who's involved. But yeah, if you would like to coordinate it, or if you can find someone to coordinate in the area, then I'm happy to come and sit down, show you at the moment I've got a spreadsheet, but I'm also happy to do it on paper if you're not able to get the Excel documents or whatever, and that goes for anyone. So yeah, I'm more than happy to sit down with you and go through that.
That's great, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I believe we have Councillor Brooks next.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thanks, everybody. It was, you know, a fantastic presentation and great to see all the work and the joined up work that we're doing as well. Not just, you know, those cross-cutting themes and work, I think is so important. It's just really a question around, obviously there's some huge pressures on people at the moment. You've got the, you know, they've just had the universal credit cuts. You've got rising and soaring energy prices and the worry about that, and obviously coming into a very expensive time of year for families as well around Christmas. So I suppose it's really about whether there's extra resource or extra support or work going to be happening around this time to sort of get people and support people extra through the winter and Christmas.
Okay, I'd probably chip in on that one if you like, because that kind of borders maybe away from the community investment team and onto the sort of the money advice team and the income team, really, because, you know, our arrears, I'll be honest, are under pressure at the moment. They're higher now than they've ever been, really, and that kind of reflects some of the points that you made, really, in the difficult circumstances people are experiencing at the moment. So the main sort of support that we provide for council tenants is through our money advisors. Who they're working hard, but they're keeping on top of their caseload at the moment. Mark used to be a money advisor, so he'll be well aware of this. But so it's money advice for our own tenants, obviously with CAB and other agencies as well, working in that field, and we make referrals, etc. But there's not any easy solutions or easy answers, really, is there? There's lots of pressures on incomes. There's lots of poverty, there's lots of in-work poverty, and it is quite a depressing situation at the moment. And we just sort of try and do our best to help people both maximise their income, minimise their outgoings in terms of costs and utility costs, etc. But like we've seen with the utility industry, you can't go online and compare and reduce the costs anymore, because that option isn't available to anyone. So it's a very tricky environment. Obviously, with payment rent recovery, we take a very sort of sensitive, supportive approach where we try and sort of engage with people and get people to make affordable repayment plans, etc. And it's just, yeah, the emphasis beyond support. Clearly, there's been, throughout the pandemic, there's been a moratorium on possession actions. That's been lifted now, so it is possible. But what we're not doing is sort of putting lots and lots of people into court. We're serving notices where we have to, where we've exhausted opportunities, but we're working with people and just trying to get some money and some repayment rather than looking to sort of push people. Because from the council's point of view, of course, and with my other hat on, we evict people from social housing, we're putting them into temporary accommodation, and we're having to rehouse people anyway. So it doesn't really make sense to move people, all the upheaval and distress and the trauma that would make into temporary accommodation. So it is a careful balancing act, because clearly the rent is important, and that funds community investment, that funds repairs and all the other range of services that we deliver, and we depend on that. So yeah, it's sort of, I'm probably going round in circles with a little bit. There's not any sort of easy answers other than to work with individuals and work through individual cases of budgeting, maximising incomes, making sure people claim the benefits, etc., that they're entitled to.
No, that's lovely. That's great. Thanks. And as I said, just links in, I think, with all the avenues that you're all in. It's people can come to you for instance, like to the food bank or time credits, and it's about picking up the other support that people might need. So no, thanks for that. That's great.
Okay, Heather, I can see you've been waiting patiently if you'd like to come in now. Oh, Heather, you're muted. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Am I there now? Right, just for Mark.
No.
We've had a time bank and it was all running smoothly with the time credits and everything. And since it's gone digital, I got about 15 children waiting for their time credits that they've already done the work for. And they said that there's a different expenditure in Cardiff than it is to Barry. Is that correct? Like over Quasi, you can go for 1 credit, where in Cardiff is more.
Yeah, yes. If, for example, I think Quasar might be a franchise system. So in theory, that they'll be making different agreements with different franchisees.
Yeah.
So that would be the case at the moment, I imagine, depending on when they're open. I'm happy to chat if you want to send me an email. Or yeah, if you just get in touch with me, all my stuff's on the Time Grow Gain website. Talk about getting the time credits sorted out for the people who've already given their time. I'm happy to do that.
That's lovely, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands up. I'm assuming we have no more questions on that item. But all I can say is thank you very much for your time tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And if you wish, those of you who've just done the presentation, you may go home or you may stick around and listen to the rest of the meeting. It is up to you. But thank you very much for coming. So I am now going to go on to agenda item 5, reports of the Director of Environment and Housing, update on Community Safety Strategy Action Plan, and this will be done by Mike and Benny.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I'll run through the presentation, Mike, unless or presentation through the report, unless you wanted
that's
to.
Fine. Thank you, Benny.
Thank you. My name is Benny. I'm the Policy Officer for the Community Safety Team and responsible for the coordination or some of the coordination of the Safe of Our Partnerships strategic and operational groups. So the report shares progress from the Safe of Our strategy action plan for the first 2 quarters of the financial year. The report, or the action plan, actually is split into ongoing actions, which detail the sort of the performance indicators that are recurrent and are reported on every month. So there are things such as the number of ASB referrals that are received and progressed through the teams, or things like where had the numbers of cases that are joint worked across organisations. And standalone actions that detail single pieces of work that were identified as needed through the strategy. So just by way of a refresher, the action plan is driven by the Safe of Our operational group, and it's ultimately governed by the Safe of Our strategic group. It details the needs that were identified in the partnership strategy 2020-2023, but it's a live document, so it's amended and added to as is felt necessary. In fact, most recently, new actions have come on that relate to things that have been identified through the needle and syringe programme review that was recently undertaken by the Substance Misuse Area Planning Board. So it responds to the needs as they're kind of being identified through the community. And the action plan relates directly to the partnership's 4 priorities, which are to prevent and reduce crime and disorder, to engage with the community, safeguard the vulnerable, and to work together to achieve those aims. So during the reporting period, 81% of the standalone actions achieved a green performance RAG rating. So this was felt to be quite a positive indication of good partnership working during a time where teams continued to deal with a lot of the fallout from the pandemic in terms of things like staff absences and changed priorities. as well as dealing with the changed landscape and new working practices. The red performance rating and a couple of the amber performance ratings relate specifically to pieces of work that were intended to look at analysing the membership of our community groups and specifically Neighbourhood Watch. The intention here was about getting a better understanding of who is in our community groups, in order to make sure that where we are running recruitment campaigns or where we're going directly to community groups for consultation, that we are doing everything that we can to make sure that those community groups can be as inclusive as they need to be to represent the communities that they serve. And so these actions have been carried forward by the chair of the Neighbourhood Watch Committee in the Vale, who's in the process of migrating membership information over to a national database that's been established, where reviews will then subsequently be able to take place. So just to run through some of my papers in order to run through some of the kind of notable changes to the partnership's activity as a result of COVID. One of the big changes that the community safety team in the Vale saw was in the reduction of the number of ASB incidents that were being processed by the team previously. Anything now relating directly to COVID is taken on board by a joint enforcement team. That team is looking particularly at the moment around things like enforcement of the requirements for travelling and people returning to the Vale from abroad. But what it's mean is that the community safety team now through the first 2 quarters have been focusing much more on the kind of business as usual and referrals that we would expect to see relating to ASB in the Vale. One of the other kind of notable areas of change since COVID is around safeguarding. There was an increase in safeguarding throughout the course of the pandemic. And this is something that really we've just been kind of more aware of and paying closer attention to, especially since research by the Violence Prevention Unit demonstrated or indicated that there had been an increase in violence among children in school settings across Wales. We've worked with the Violence Prevention Unit to kind of drill down on those figures for the Vale to see what that actually means for the Vale. And figures indicate that 4 incidents had been recorded, that had risen to 6 incidents across the beginning of the calendar year, and had kind of remained back at 4. So an increase. But when we're looking at such small figures, an increase that's kind of a difficult one to draw statistical significance from. So we're working with our safeguarding teams to just make sure that there isn't anything that we're missing in terms of where children might be at risk, having been increased to exposures of violence and things like that throughout the course of the pandemic. So that's something that the team are focusing on. And then just running through some of the kind of the other standalone actions during those first 2 quarters. Under the prevent and reduce crime and disorder priority, one of the particular successes was in the creation of a new home starter pack. So information has been compiled ready to distribute to new home starters relating to information about community safety. So just kind of identifying that when we're in the system and we know how it works, it's easy to navigate. But actually for someone coming in who doesn't know who to refer what to and when and what you should refer to and what constitutes as ASB and signs of domestic abuse and so on and so forth, just about kind of having all of that information ready for people to be able to access when they need it. Under the engage priority, there's been a drive to recruit domestic abuse champions within partner agency organisations and other departments within the council. So that's just seen as a kind of a good first step really towards how much more we want domestic abuse to be infiltrated across, all organisations are kind of embedded, or the identification and understanding of domestic abuse to be embedded across the culture of organisations. And those champions are also responsible for leading or on the train the trainer courses that are run through the national training framework. So again, about kind of increasing the training and the awareness of domestic abuse across organisations within the Vale. Under the priority safeguards, There was a review of the IDVA provision, who's the Independent Domestic Violence Advocate. That review was seen to be successful, and it's also driven an increase or the demand for more funding to recruit additional IDVAs across the Vale. So we've now got additional IDVAs who have been recruited by Italifro. So again, just a kind of positive indication of more support being given to high risk victims of domestic abuse across the Vale. And finally, under the priority work together, new data sheets have been created so that information can be shared between community safety and housing, just to make sure that information is being shared as it should be, so that kind of other departments are aware of things that would help with their decision making and the management of their tenants and so on. And the fire service also created a kind of information pack so that people know who to contact for what with regards to community safety within the fire service in the Vale. And then in terms of the kind of the ongoing actions, I think one of the big successes for the quarter, the first 2 quarters, was around finally being able to re-engage with residents across the Vale through the ASB roadshow and the engagement that happened across the summer. I think it was just felt to be really positive to finally be back on Trev and engaging face to face with residents, and ready to kind of talk about community safety, to listen to people's concerns, and to kind of get better understandings of I know especially one of the things that was being looked at in particular was in relation to feelings of safety following the drive to increase the feelings of safety on the streets following the death of Sarah Everard. But it was just good to kind of be back to a face-to-face, or a place where we were having face-to-face contact with residents again. And I think a further positive development has been in the increase in the use of deployable cameras, which they now stand at 11 cameras that are deployed across various hotspots in the Vale. And I think they were previously instrumental in identifying youths in King's Square who had been perpetrating ASB. And so I think kind of finally, just to talk about one of the frustrations, I suppose, but has led to a kind of a success, was around, as I've touched upon before, one of the drivers recently has been in increasing the feelings of safety on the streets following the death of Sarah Everard. And across the 2 quarters, a number of capital funding opportunities were released by the Home Office to help drive initiatives to improve feelings of safety. The Vale were quite disappointed to not be able to access a number of those funding pots because we didn't meet the right crime level thresholds. And then when we finally did meet the right crime threshold, we weren't able to really apply for anything that would have been meaningful, because one of the things that they wouldn't fund was anything that would aid physical improvements, which is where we, and consultation with residents, has identified that our feelings of safety would need improvement. But in response to this, the partnership are working on the creation of a kind of off-the-shelf funding priority list, so that when opportunities like this come out at short notice, and I think one of the frustrations with the Safer Streets Home Office funding opportunities is they came up with very little notice, and they had quick deadlines over tough periods, because it was during the summer months where engagement was particularly difficult with schools and other community groups that we might have wanted to engage with. That we would have these kind of priorities ready to access, and engagement, we would know what we would need to engage with who in order to be able to put those funding priorities together should opportunities arise in the future. So that's a positive thing that's come out of those initial frustrations. And that pretty much covers the activity over the first 2 quarters. Thank you, Chair. Mike, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, we've obviously been doing a lot of work as a partnership, going back to the last point that Benny made in terms of information and data, and there's a recognition that additional resources are required across the South Wales region effectively in order to better provide that information. And that's something that came up at our last Safer Vale board meeting, in fact. Commitment from the police and the PCC specifically to look at additional resource or capacity to be dedicated to this, because for many of these grants and funding opportunities, data is king. And I suppose going back to the point that Benny made around challenges over the last 12 to 18 months, resources have been targeted in dealing with pandemic and very much reactive rather than proactive. So there's a piece of work there that, as Benny says, where our intelligence and our data will lead us to develop projects that we can roll out at very short notice. Safer Streets funding, I think we're probably at the third round of Safer Streets, second or third round of Safer Streets funding from memory. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, the Vale of Morgan is not seen as a particular crime hotspot. And as a result of which, in terms of the criterion that needs to be achieved in order, the thresholds that Benny talks about, are much more likely to be achieved in some of our valleys, some of the South Wales Valleys authorities, and obviously our capital city. So on the one hand, I'm pleased to say that in terms of crime and violence, fundamentally the Vale is a safe place to live, but it also means that when individual incidents occur, we do find it difficult to access the same level of resourcing. Thank you, Chair.
Finally, let me unmute. Thank you very much, Benny and Mike. Do we have any questions? No. I can see Councillor Nugent-Finn has one, but I do have one more. The deployable, I do have one question before Councillor Nugent-Finn comes in. The deployable cameras, how long do they spend in any one place before being moved to another?
So it's needs assessed, and it's a partnership kind of decision. They'll stay in a place as long as they need to. The terms of reference around each of the cameras, or the standing operating procedure, states that they shouldn't really be in one place for longer than a year. But that would be reviewed if it needed to be. If ASB continuously was being continually perpetrated in an area, and it was felt that a static camera wasn't necessary, then the deployable cameras, there would be a business case for the deployable cameras remaining in that area until the ASB was felt to be under control.
Okay, and you probably get lots of requests from people to put them in different areas. How do you decide which area to put them in? What data do you use?
It's all police data for now. We are looking at improving the kind of data that's put into making sure that it's as accessible as it needs to be for all of the partners in the partnership. However, as it stands, luckily for now, the police data is usually the data that everybody else also would recognise as being where the need is for the cameras to go. So that's really where the decisions are made. I know that it was also within the council departments. I know that recently a request has been made for a camera to go into the docks office, following some move around of things out of the Court Road depot. So that would probably be, we'd look at whether we'd look at supporting that, given the importance of what's being asked to be looked at, and the ASB in the area generally.
Okay, thank you, Benny. Councillor Nugent-Finn.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Benny. I had the pleasure of going out with your team at the end of the summer, actually, in Stratford Green. So that was lovely to meet the team and everything else. Benny, I'm just wondering, do you work in collaboration with schools?
Yes, I mean, so most of the work that we do is in terms of young people is with the Youth Offending Service, but where, so for example, particularly with the safeguarding issues that have been arisen through that are kind of rearing their heads, and with all of the domestic abuse work that we do, we work closely with our department, with the education department within the council, and that's how we access our schools. I mean, they're certainly called upon, and our contact with them has increased in terms of the domestic abuse work that we do, so that they feed directly into the dark process, so that we where there are children who are known to be involved in domestic abuse incidents, the school also has an input, so that we're sure that we're checking off all the boxes in terms of whether or not behaviors have changed and that we would otherwise not be aware of. So we definitely try to work as closely as we can with schools and with the education department as possible.
Great. I just think there's a lot of mileage in it, Benny. Carrickston is a massive school, it's about 500 pupils, and during lockdown, like yourselves, they had to work in a very different manner. But in actual fact, some of the outcomes were really positive in terms of engagement with people that they wouldn't have automatically. And again, I just think there's some mileage perhaps in you linking up with some of the really good practices that you're doing, and certainly the school are doing as well. But it's great to listen to you, Benny. And yeah, fabulous team. Thank you very much for everything that you do.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Do we have any more questions? Okay, so the recommendation is that Scrutiny consider the progress made against the Safer Vale Partnership Action Plan. Are we happy with that recommendation?
Yeah,
Yes,
happy
Chair.
to accept recommendation.
Okay, so thank you very much for that, Benny. You're welcome to stick around, but you can leave if you wish. The next item now is the Housing and Building Services 2021-22 housing improvement work. I believe this is Mike and possibly Andrew Trewick as well.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew is with us today, and will lead mainly on mainly on the report. I think we probably haven't brought a housing investment report to this committee for quite some time. Now that's partly been down to, as I've mentioned earlier, other pressures, but also, as you can see from the report, and Andrew will allude to, a lot of the contract. We've had a lot of contract issues over the last 12 months, clearly for a variety of reasons which are mentioned in the report. But I think it's just important for us to sort of flag up what we did do last year in terms of the amount of work and what is in the pipeline and what's in the very near future. It's about £15 million worth of investment that we're talking about in terms of the housing stock. That includes new build as well as the housing improvement work that you'll see before you this evening. And that investment continues over the coming years. And clearly, we're about to start planning for the new housing investment, our new housing investment programme, as part of a piece of work that we do annually, looking at our 30-year housing business plan. And of course, a lot of the focus going forward and a lot of the discussions we'll have in the coming weeks and months is around the carbon agenda, about climate, and about picking up on some of the points that Councillor Brooks raised around, how can we contribute through the energy efficiency of our homes to make our homes more affordable, given obviously increasing prices in utility costs and what have you. So I'll hand you then over to Andrew. Andrew can give you a bit more detail about the issues that we've faced over the last year or so, and we'll also lead you on some of the exciting work that either is in place, has been completed, or is in the throes of being procured over the next 12 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mike. I think last year was quite a difficult year for everybody concerned, and things didn't stop. The service continued to run. We were still having to do health and safety aspects of the business. So things like gas safety inspections were still taking place. The electrical inspections were still taking place, but a lot of our contractors had actually nation, so there wasn't very much activity on sites, and they were drawing down on furlough, and staff were being kept safe. That gradually started to open up a little bit, but there were still some reservations about working in tenanted properties because of having to mix and spread the disease, and we were very conscious about the part that we played with our tenants in keeping them both safe, and our contractors and our own staff too. So as things started to ease a little bit in April, we thought that we would be back in business, and things would function as they have normally. But what we found is that as the economy started to open up again, there were big draws on materials, on supplies, increasing pressure on contractors who were able to pick and choose where they worked and where they wanted to work, and as a consequence of that, costs have started to increase significantly. So the £15 million that we had in the budget that we were intending to spend and deliver a range of works probably won't go quite as far as we thought it would do. So we are finding cost pressures in the region of between 20 and 30% on some of the intending in delivering, all of which has an impact on us in trying to put those projects out. And unfortunately for us, some of the projects that we had tendered at the start of last year for delivery in last year, the contractors were not able to hold those prices, understandably so. And as a consequence of which, we had to go back out to tender again, all of which made extra work for the team delivering that particular project. The other thing that we found was that one of the contractors who we had appointed to do work has actually gone into liquidation. And again, there's a large amount of work associated with managing a contract in liquidation, probably more so than there would be if that project was actually running live. And as a consequence of which, the team is quite stretched. So it was probably pertinent to deliver a report that said, this is what we're intending to do, this is what we are trying to do, so that you as members were aware of the activities that were likely to take place in your wards, and you could actually see that we hadn't forgotten about delivering that particular programme. There are a number of things or projects that have been completed, not least of which is the fencing one, and that continues to deliver across the Vale. Our priority is still about delivering fabric first improvement for projects in trying to reduce our carbon footprint. And as Mike said, we're starting now to look at where we go next year. So, I mean, the report is in front of you. You can see the detail in it. I don't intend in going through that report unless there are any particular questions on it. If anyone wants to know anything on it, you can see where it is, and you will obviously be aware in your area whereabouts we are in delivery of some of that project. We've either started or we haven't. We've got a couple of schemes that we are about to start. One is at Severn Avenue and one is at Long Meadow. Both of those projects have been successfully tendered by a company called MySpace, and we've been in conversation with those to arrange a start date. But as you will probably appreciate, we're now rapidly approaching the Christmas break, and what we don't want to do is make a start, get a site set up, and then the contractor have to demobilise, put the mothball the site, and then start again in the new year. So the chances of those actually being on site before Christmas become quite remote now. So yeah, I'll hand it over to members if they've got any questions they want to specifically raise.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mike and Andrew. Do we have any questions? I don't see any hands up. To me, that was fairly self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But okay, I don't have any questions. Thank you very much.
I've got away lightly there then by comparison.
You have. Okay, you have. So, the recommendation, if I can just get it on my screen, 2 seconds. The recommendation is that the committee notes the proposed investment programme and difficulties currently being experienced in the construction sector. Well, if we're happy to, I will consider them noted and we can agree with that recommendation. Everybody happy?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Well, agenda item 7. I will thank Mike and Andrew again, and Nick, who is still here, for coming along tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Agenda item 7 is any items that I have urgent. I have no urgent items. Sorry, I have no urgent items, so I would just like to say thank you for everybody coming tonight, and I will like to remind you that the next meeting for this committee is scheduled for the 8th of December at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Night, Chairman. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair.